Yeah, hey, I think we're live. Yeah, I meant to bring the tripod so I could set it up, but I forgot. That's the
Oh,
way it is. So we are Black Flag Media
yeah,
uh,
we're on the road.
on the road. We're in Toronto, and we're going to do a little bit of a on the ground, boots on the ground report, and we'll see how that goes. But I thought before we actually get right on the ground, I'd ask Derek to kind of explain the history, fairly succinctly or quickly. I don't know. And we don't have any listeners at the moment, but
Oh, okay.
they'll come on eventually. They always do, right?
Yeah, they always do, of
Yeah, they
course.
always do.
Or they pick it up
They
afterwards.
pick it up after. So we're down here because we have gotten word that there will be a march of pro-Palestinian, do we call them pro-Hamas? Like, what do we want to call them? I've been kind of saying they're pro-Hamas, but whatever.
Yeah, well,
You're
it's a
all right with
mix.
that?
Well, yeah, I meant, their movement has changed just as much as ours has
No.
over the years.
So we just thought we'd get a little bit of a history lesson here because I don't know a whole lot about the Middle East situation. I'm catching on a little bit, but this Middle East problem has been going on for many, many years, and but we just thought we'd kind of get to see if Derek could kind of fill us in. So you go ahead whenever you're
Oh, okay.
ready.
I'll give you a little
Yeah,
bit of history lesson.
yeah, a little history lesson.
So that area of say Israel and Palestine, I guess, as far as history goes, the oldest name that we have for that area is Canaan.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, that's new to me.
Now, people have lived in that area.
I know Scotia.
Oh, people have lived in
It's been
that
a while.
area. They archaeologists say till 10,000 BC, believe it or not.
Mm.
And there was people even from Macedonia that had come across in that area. So Canaan, if you, I'm going to say a little bit of what's proven on history, and then a lot of that's still biblical. So a lot of that's biblical references.
Yeah.
But if you go through there, so the Philistines, okay, were probably the largest tribe at that time, as long as there was Bedouins and nomads that had occupied Canaan. Okay, and then go from there. Now, if you do, this is somewhere kind of where the Bible comes into play. So if you believe Exodus, so Exodus comes across, right? It's not Moses that take them to the promised land, it's Joshua. So Joshua come in what we believe would be the north part of Canaan.
Okay.
Okay, so he establishes the north part. And now, obviously, they through biblical and through history, they were constantly at war with the Philistines, even as far back as that goes. So after um, Joshua goes, you have King Solomon, Saul, and then the line of King David that comes after that. So that's how they filter through there. But through time, you got to remember that Canaan was conquered constantly. So the Egyptians were the first that owned that land. Alexander the Great, the Babylonians. Now the Babylonians came in at the time of both when the Israelites were there and everything. So the Babylonians had conquered that completely as well. So then we go through the pages of history, and there's lots. So it was always the main contention is Jerusalem, and so Jerusalem is, you could arguably say, it's somewhere in the area of the 8 oldest cities in the world. Okay, with Mesopotamia being what they believe to be really the first city that was ever created. Now, Jerusalem, you will see the Dome of the Rock, which is the Golden Dome. So that Golden Dome, it is a mosque, and it was also built on top of what would be the first temple, which is the Temple Mount, which would be what Solomon had built. Now within there is, and below is the rock where Muhammad descended, and is also the rock where they believe, if you believe the biblical interpretations of it, would be where Abraham was going to kill Isaac his son, and the angel came down from there. So that's significant of the rock. Now there's also other believings is the great flood. Actually, the water from the great flood came below that rock as well. So that's in the teaching, but of course that's never historical. So that's that history. Now that I'll explain to when the dome had come in, because that's relatively new history, not ancient history. So Canaan developed to that. Now it was really what had happened was there was a mix of these tribes all through, and then the Roman Empire came in, and I'll kind of start more from the Roman Empire. So we don't know arguably where the name Judea came from, whether the Romans named it that, or what would be the descendants of David and the Jewish tribe, was that's what it was called. So it was always a hard state to control. So as you go through history, the Roman Emperor Hadrian, one of the great builders, because of many Jewish uprisings, what he did was he basically called the area Palestina, as just to give it to the Jews that which were hard to control. And that, where that name comes from, you can arguably say it's from Philistines. There's other professors that would say, well, Palestine or the Palestine came from Pale. And when you go way back to Canaan, way back into BC times, there was a god of agriculture called Pale, and that's maybe where that interpretation came from, or just the Latin term from Philistines going to Palestine from there. So the Roman Empire eventually falls, and then what you'd have is you had the first Crusades, from the European Crusades, come down, and they basically held Jerusalem, and then Jerusalem fell to basically what would become the Ottoman Empire, which is the Turks, the famous Saladin and Richard the Lionheart. Basically, they met. Richard Lionheart, they met before battle. He exchanged an English horse for an Arabian falcon. So that was kind of fun story. So over time, that area was really controlled by the Ottoman Empire, and that's a long period of history, centuries. Now, the Ottoman Empire, of course, when we're going into World War II became a huge issue. World War I, sorry. Now, the Ottomans, that was the decline of the Ottoman Empire, and they fell after World War I. So what happened was this whole area, all of that Eurasia, south of Europe, in North Africa, all of that fell because of the Ottoman Empire, and they all became countries from there. But what happened was the British said, well, what about this spot, which was Canaan, Palestine? What is it? Israel, what it was called. So they decided to carve that out and make that the Jewish homeland, and what would they call it? With the Balfour Doctrine. So the Balfour Doctrine cut that label part out and says, so the Jews from Europe can move in there and establish Israel. So there was somewhat relatively peace, and then World War II, of course, broke out after World War I, and then there became more of a after World War II, there became more of a flow of Israelis into that area. Where we get to history right now is we'd have to go back to 95, which was the Oslo Accord, in which Clinton really wanted to get peace, or a two-state solution, and at that time it was the PLO, which was Yasser Arafat, and he really wanted, and Isaac Rabin from Israel. So they came up with this accord. Basically, what he did is he rushed it way through, because there was no, because of the West Bank and Gaza, it was really never defined, and then there was really no, method of what are they going to do with all these new settlements, and as well as some cities that were both Jewish and Muslim. So there was a real mix, and it was Clinton really trying to lambaste this through, that all of this was missed, and this was eventually going to lead to a two-state solution. So now afterwards, what happened is that Arafat passed away, and Obama came in, and then we were kind of hoping for elected state, and then we had the Palestinian Authority, and then there was one election, and then basically what the thing is now is the Palestinian Authority was directly overtaken, if you'd want to call it that, or Hamas was voted in, and then that controls it. Now, going back,
so that is the moment, really, when Hamas is voted in. This is kind of
that's kind of where
turning point.
the
That's
turning
where
point.
we are at now.
Right. But if you go a little farther back into the late 60s, the Six-Day War, that was huge when Egypt and them converged on Israel. Israel fought them back, but what Israel did do is they capped the West Bank and that one portion of Gaza. So they maintained that. And the UN had intervened, and that's where you had the Golan Heights that had come in, and the Golan Heights were in the north part between Lebanon and what would be Israel now, as they say. Golan Heights was also the hold because Lebanon was in a civil war at the same time as well after that Six-Day War. So it was to maintain that.
Okay.
And we actually, to this day, the Golan Heights there is still UN forces there. And actually, yesterday, Netanyahu asked the UN to take those troops away to avoid danger.
Yeah, I saw that.
So the UN hasn't responded to that. A little Canadian history. There's Canadians there as well. 74 Canadian cargo jet was shot down, and 9 Canadian servicemen were killed, and that was basically supplies and humanitarian aid.
And when was that?
That was shot down by the Assyrians, I believe, in 74, 75,
okay.
and that was to fill what would be the Golan Heights.
It's a very confusing. It's a long time fight in that area.
Well, yeah, you're basically going back to the
Like,
way even
they've
before
been
the first
fighting
millennium.
over this for such a long time.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're fighting over? Is it that rock, really? That Mecca? Is
Oh
that
well, no,
really-
Mecca's in Saudi
Not
Arabia.
Mecca. Sorry,
the
that
Dome of the
dome.
Rock. The Dome of the Rock.
Dome of the Rock.
Well, yeah, that's partly contention, but it's also through history. I meant first, there were security clearances, they were fenced in, disputed land claims. This is going on and on. Corruption on both sides. Like the Palestinian Authority was corrupted. The PLO. I meant Nasser Arafat. Now we find out that millions of dollars of aid and things like that was going. He was skimming it. That's why his wife lives in luxury in France. But so there was always this corruption and no focus on the people themselves.
Why do you think they voted in Hamas?
Good question. They came in, but they held. They may not have even have represented themselves as Hamas when they came in.
Right.
So Abbas at one time, he did have power of the authority, but it's basically gone away. A lot of times too is whether it's from Bush or Clinton or Carter, they always wanted to be the president that would make peace there. And what happens is they rush through these negotiations, or there's really hardly anything to negotiate. But the goal was obviously at one point in time to have a two-state solution. But I don't think at this point now the Israeli government, the way it's situated now, they have no stomach for any two-state solution at this point.
So Gaza.
So
is
we're going into a pretty long, drawn-out conflict.
Yeah, okay. And Gaza is definitely locked in because they've got the Israel on one border and they've got Egypt on the other border.
Yeah, so sort of you have Egypt and then you sort of have Lebanon like this.
Okay.
So Egypt does border it, but Egypt is not allowing any Palestinian refugees in.
Right.
Now they were a lot of contention. They were allowing aid trucks to come through. Now a month ago, there's contention that the Israelis blew up some of these aid trucks. They were saying no, it was weaponry. So this is the things that you go back and forth there. You don't know the truth there.
Right.
You don't know what's happening there. But there is some encampment that they say that is being constructed near the Egyptian border to take people on, but they're not at this point in time.
Okay.
So we don't know. We don't know the influence for that.
Well, as it's been said, that these wars in this Middle East conflict has been going on for many, many years.
Oh,
But
millennia.
the fact that but the fact that it's now spilled onto the North American and Western countries is definitely, it's spilled into Europe as well.
Yeah.
But here in Canada and the U.S., it's so spilled in here that we are having hundreds and thousands of people marching on the streets here, and that's become super problematic.
Yeah.
And what does Canada do? Well, about that, I mean, policing would be certainly a first start, but politically speaking, what does Canada do about this
Well,
to keep it off their own streets? And I think the fact that they banned these terrorist groups is definitely a great big step forward. And if they can start deporting, this is my contention here, and my understanding, that if they could start deporting these people back to their homeland, wherever that may be, these terrorist groups, then maybe we'd find some peace here. I don't know. Or beyond that.
Well, I think I don't know where we're beyond that, but these protests are generally for Canada not to provide Israel with arms. But the greater conversation has to be, what's going to happen there? Is there going to be a two-state solution or not?
Yeah.
Or now Canada, you realize that I know what little arms we give to, I don't even think we give arms to Israel per se right now. I think it's more or less just supplies and uniforms and I think like that. And then I'm not too sure if there's drone technology going over there or not, but I mean, it's pretty little. But Canada's destroyed our international reputation now anyway. I mean, Trudeau, he has no power.
I think we have to talk beyond Trudeau.
Oh, you have to talk beyond Trudeau.
Yeah.
I mean, like Canada's had huge history since World War II. Basically, our first peacekeeping mission was in the Congo in the early 50s after World War II. And then we've been keeping peace throughout the world all the time. But now we haven't. I mean, our military's been so decimated that, I mean, we don't even, what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think as a Canadian anyway, and falsely or not, but I always felt really kind of proud of the fact that Canada were the peacekeepers, at least known to be the peacekeepers of the world, and I'd certainly like to get that reputation back. So we shall see about that.
But you got to imagine, in all conflicts, innocent people are being murdered and killed.
Of course, yeah.
Right, for their greater.
Yeah.
And this still has all the globalist and fingerprints all over this as well,
that
right?
point too.
But all I'm saying is, it's as it stands right now, this is going to be elongated. It's going to be elongated.
So how's our time doing? So
we're
I think we've covered
close
that
about to
pretty
20
well.
minutes,
Maybe
yeah.
we'll just keep on touching base on that.
Yeah.
And obviously now, well, we've had this for a while now, but Trudeau has got this problem with India, so we won't get into that right now because that's a whole other
That's a whole other
situation.
thing,
But
yeah.
at one point, maybe we'll talk about that.
after. And
So-
that's worth another show.
Yeah, that's another couple of shows for sure. Because, as I say, these conflicts have been going on for millennia, but they have literally spilled into our streets.
Yeah.
So tonight we did get word that there would be a march down here in downtown Toronto, so we've come down to cover it.
Yep. So
And
there's.
so you'll probably be doing a live, maybe.
I'll be doing a live. So
On your Facebook, and
Well-
I'll probably do a live on this YouTube channel. But we'll see. We may stick together a little bit. It depends,
or
or we
sure.
might kind of split up, depending on the volatility of
and
what's
we'll see how
going
we'll
on
see how
down
it
there.
goes. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll talk about this later, or I'll just put it up. But we've been covering in the homeless in and around Ontario, the small towns, and right here in Toronto. And so where we are parked right here, there's a camp just outside the door here, and it is absolutely disgusting. So I've taken some film of that, and that'll be up there soon. And yeah, we're just trying to keep everybody posted on what's going on. Boots on the ground. Black Flag Media, always for peace.
Always for peace.
Always for peace. Okay. All right.
100%.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Freedom.
Bye. Freedom.
I think that was good.
You have to stay.